She's sitting alone in her parked car. The rain taps gently against the windshield like a slow, steady heartbeat, the only sound in a silence that feels heavier than words. Her fingers tremble just slightly as they hover over her phone, the screen still lit up with his last message. "I didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting again." She reads it again and again. Her chest tightens, but no tears come this time, just that familiar ache, that hollow place behind her ribs where love used to live. Maybe if I just explained it better, maybe if I didn't say what I said, maybe if I was easier to love. That's the loop, the invisible one, the one that plays in the background of her life like a quiet hum, always there, always whispering that she is the problem. The camera slowly pulls in, closer to her face. She's not crying, but her eyes are glassy, lost. You can see the storm in them, the war between knowing better and hoping he meant better. In her lap, her hand rests over her heart, like she's trying to hold herself together. "Why do I keep doing this?" she whispers into the dark. And maybe you asked yourself the same thing. Why do you keep loving people who give you crumbs? Why do you keep forgiving the same apology with different words? Why do you stay when deep down it hurts more than it heals? It sups not because you supper weak. It steps not because you set naive. It's because somewhere along the line, you learn to confuse chaos with chemistry. You learn to chase the feeling of being needed, even if it meant bleeding for it. But tonight, sitting in that car, in that quiet, something inside her begins to shift. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's just a quiet knowing rising from the depth of her soul. I deserve more than this. Maybe, just maybe, you sit feeling that too. So stay with me, because this isn't about blaming you for loving too hard. It's about finally understanding why. And once you do, you won't love the same way ever again. He sits not that bad. That's the lie she tells herself when she feels the sting of his silence. When he cancels plans again, when his words cut her in places he never bothers to notice, she smooths the pain over with excuses. Because if she admits the truth, that she's slowly disappearing inside this, then what does that say about her? She tells herself, "I'm just sensitive," like that justifies the ache. She convinces herself that love is supposed to be complicated, messy, hard, that maybe the pain is proof that it's real. But there's another voice, deeper and older, the one she keeps locked beneath her smile. Why do I always have to try so hard to feel wanted? Why does love always mean losing pieces of myself? She plays the part well, laughs when she's supposed to, reassures her friends that she's fine, that they don't understand him the way she does. But alone in the stillness of her own mind, the truth grows louder. She worries that if she stops chasing his affection, it'll vanish. That if she sets a boundary, will find someone easier. That if she lets go, she'll confirm the fear she's carried since childhood, that she's not worth staying for. And yet, every time he leaves and comes back, it feels like a small victory. Not because he's changed, but because it delays the heartbreak. She clings to the potential of him, not the reality. Because the truth is, she's not in love with who he is. She sits in love with who she hoped he's set to become. That sits the silent suffering. The endless performance of being easygoing, understanding, chill, while her heart screams to be chosen without conditions. This is the unseen war women fight in toxic love. The war between their longing to be held and their need to be whole. And perhaps she doesn't speak these things out loud. Perhaps no one knows how exhausted she really is. But inside, in the quiet corners of her psyche, she is begging for relief. Not from him, but from the version of herself that keeps settling for less. Every morning she made him coffee, 2 sugars, no cream, just the way he liked it. He never asked, she just noticed, like she noticed everything. Like how he stopped saying good morning, but she kept saying it anyway. Like how his touch became rare, but she still leaned in just in case. Maya wasn't naive. She knew what distance felt like. But when you love someone, you don't just walk away the moment things feel uneven. You wait, you try, you hope. There was a night, it was raining. She had just cooked his favorite meal, lit candles, even wore that blue dress he once said made her look like summer. He walked in late, eyes on his phone, said I already ate. She smiled, said it was okay. Later that night she cried quietly in the bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub with the faucet running just to muffle the sound. Not because of the dinner, but because that was the 10th time that month, and she still pretended it didn't matter. She told her friends he was just stressed, told herself he was just tired. But truthfully, she was tired too. Tired of loving him in silence, tired of shrinking so he wouldn't feel overwhelmed, tired of begging with her presence while he responded with absence. And then came the message. A name she didn't recognize. A screenshot she hadn't prepared for. She didn't scream, didn't throw things. She just stared at her reflection, phone in hand, like she was trying to remember who she used to be before all this. That night, she didn't wait for him to come home. She packed one bag. She left the coffee machine on the counter. And the next morning, for the first time in 2 years, she made coffee for herself. Black, no sugar, bitter, but honest. And that sips when she knew it wasn't that she loved him too much. It was that she forgot to love herself at all. Why do I keep waiting for him to realize my worth when deep down I already know it? Why does silence from someone else feel louder than the love I give myself? When did I start calling neglect patience and abandonment strength? And if I keep losing pieces of myself just to keep someone else, who's really leaving who? These are the quiet questions that echo in the spaces no one sees. The ones she asks while lying awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, pretending she's okay. She doesn't speak them out loud. Maybe she's afraid of the answers. Or maybe a part of her already knows. That love shouldn't feel like waiting. That being chosen shouldn't feel like begging. That she was never asking for too much, only from someone who was never ready to give enough. And somewhere inside her, beneath the doubt and the ache, a whisper rises, I deserve more than this. And this time, she believes it. There is a quiet truth buried beneath every woman who keeps loving the one who wounds her. She is not weak, she is repeating. Repeating what her unconscious has memorized as love. Not the warmth of safety, but the ache of absence. Not the steady hands of care, but the unpredictability of being seen and then forgotten. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And so here she is, wondering why every path leads her back to someone who cannot stay. Not realizing the path was carved long ago. As a little girl, perhaps she learned that love had conditions. That love came with silence. That affection was earned, not given freely. Maybe she grew up watching someone chase someone else's attention. Maybe she learned that being good meant being quiet. That being lovable meant never being too much, not too angry, not too needy, not too loud. And when that child grows into a woman, the body may change, the voice may deepen, the words may become wiser, but the wound remains untouched, unless brought into the light. So when she meets him, the man who is half present, half missing, he feels strangely familiar. Not because he's meant for her future, but because he resembles her past. He awakens not her joy, but her unfinished business. He becomes the mirror of the father who was too distracted, the echo of the mother who withheld praise, the emotional ghost she's been trying to resurrect into presence. She keeps loving him not because she doesn't know better, but because deep in her unconscious, she believes if this time she is good enough, patient enough, perfect enough, She will finally earn the love she was once denied. But here sits the healing truth. You were never unworthy. You were simply a child trying to survive an emotional landscape no one taught you how to navigate. And now, as a woman, your patterns are not curses, they are invitations. They are the psyche's sitti's way of saying, look here, this is where it still hurts. Because every time you lose yourself in someone who doesn't see you, you are being called back, not to them but to you, to the younger version of you still waiting for someone to choose her. And maybe for the first time it's you who needs to choose her, to listen to her unmet needs, to hold her tears without shame, to say you are enough even when no one else says it. Healing isn't sit about cutting people off in anger. It sits about waking up to yourself in love, about realizing that peace doesn't feel like chaos, that love doesn't have to feel like waiting. And when the unconscious becomes conscious, when you see the pattern for what it is, you finally understand. You don't have to repeat it anymore. You are allowed to rewrite the ending, not because they changed, but because you did. It was a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no final betrayal, no slammed doors. Just quiet. He hadn't called. Again, the food she made sat untouched on the counter. Her phone was silent, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't pick it up to check. She sat by the window, legs curled under her, a blanket draped loosely over her shoulders. Outside, the world moved without asking her permission. Cars passed, leaves fluttered in the late afternoon breeze. The kind of moment that would have normally made her feel invisible, but today something inside her shifted. She noticed it when she heard the hum of the refrigerator. She had never really noticed it before. It was strange how loud the world was without his chaos filling it. No texts to decode, no mood to manage, no apologies to wait for, just stillness. And in that stillness, she heard something else. Something softer, something steady, her own breath, in and out, still here, still alive, still her. It caught her off guard, the realization. She wasn't sad, not in that aching, longing way. She was tired, yes, but beneath the tiredness was something quieter, clarity, like waking up from a dream where you were running and finally realizing you never had to run. She walked to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror, not to fix her hair, not to practice a smile, just to look, really look. The woman staring back wasn't broken. She was worn, yes, but not defeated. There was something ancient in her eyes, like all the women before her who had learned to stand again. And in that moment she whispered a word so quietly she almost didn't hear it. Enough. Not in anger, not in bitterness, just truth. Just enough. Enough pretending she was okay. Enough holding on to crumbs and calling it a feast. Enough making herself smaller so someone else could feel big. She placed her hand gently over her chest. Not to hold herself together this time, but to honor the part of her that stayed alive through it all. And that sips when it happened. Not a breakdown, an awakening. She didn't need him to choose her. She didn't need a grand apology or a final explanation, because she finally realized she had been waiting for someone to love her the way she was meant to love herself. And now, she would. The days began to feel different, not louder, just more true. There was no dramatic exit, no goodbye text drafted then deleted. She simply stopped waiting for the call that never came, waiting for a version of him that only lived in her imagination, waiting for her pain to mean something to someone who never tried to understand it. And instead, she started listening to the small things, to the morning light creeping in through the blinds, to the way her body softened when she wasn't bracing for disappointment, to the sound of her own voice, no longer apologizing for feeling too much. She still remembered him, of course she did. Healing doesn't erase the memory, but the ache was no longer sacred. It was just, she began taking walks again, the kind she used to love before love made her forget herself. She bought the flowers she always hoped he'd bring home. Not because she was lonely, but because she finally understood. No one was coming to save her from the emptiness. And that was freedom. She stopped rehearsing the right words to say if he ever reached out. Because the truth was, she no longer needed to be understood by someone who had chosen confusion over clarity. Her worth didn't live in his realization. It lived in the way she started returning to herself. Gently, tenderly, without shame. She cried less, not because she was numb, but because the tears had finally done their work. They had carved out the space where her new self would rise. She stopped searching for signs from the universe to hold on, and started trusting the signs it had given her all along to let go. She wasn't bitter. She didn't become colder or harder. She just became clear. And in that clarity, she remembered that love isn't supposed to feel like longing. It's not a rescue. It's a meeting of souls, of safety, of truth. So she gathered the pieces of herself she had scattered in his hands, one by one, memory by memory. She reclaimed her laughter, her softness, her peace. She lit candles for no one but herself, danced barefoot in her living room, told the moon her secrets again, and every night she slept without the weight of needing to be enough for someone else. She became a little more herself. There was no grand epiphany, just a quiet knowing that echoed deeper than any promise he'd ever broken. She had survived the kind of love that tried to convince her she was hard to love. And now, she was learning to love herself in all the ways he never could. And if he ever came back, if he ever stood in front of her with soft words and sorry eyes, he would not find the woman who begged to be seen. He would find the woman who saw herself. He would find the quiet strength of someone who no longer needed to be chosen, because she had already chosen herself. She didn't break. She didn't harden. She bloomed, right there, in the silence he left behind.